I know, another podcast where we complain about the PGMOL and needing to get something out of the game, get it corrected. But seriously, when are they going to stop allowing corner kick goals? This is the ArsenalVision Post-Match Podcast. My name's Elliot. Hello, everybody. It's a great question, isn't it? When are they going to end the scourge of corner kick goals? They've been saying for literally days that corner kicks are a huge problem in the Premier League and that teams shouldn't be allowed to score from them, but Arsenal do score from them, sometimes even off William Saliba's butt. And I would suggest that that is an improvement off scoring off William Gallas's butt. Gallas was good for the occasional goal off weird areas of his body. Just ask the Arscast, who had a whole segment about a part of his body. But you know what? I prefer rooting for William Saliba personally. Arsenal did beat Manchester United 2-0, 4 consecutive wins over Manchester United, and I suggest everybody enjoy that fact. It is always good to beat Manchester United. We have a chance to do it again in the FA Cup. So, no Clive today. If you want your Clive, though, let me tell you something. We did the countdown. The countdown is a concept of sort of rapid fire questions that we do on the Patreon and Apple subscription thing. 10 questions confronting the Arsenal at the moment. And we get Clive to go through them quickly, which, all things being equal, I think it's a Herculean effort. And you will like it. I think we did some really cool stuff on the last episode of the countdown. If you're interested, we talked about whether the Champions League is ours for the taking, who our non-Saka player of the season is so far, whether Chelsea are legitimate title challengers. Will Saka break the assist record? There's how many points we need for the title. A lot of good stuff in there. Tomorrow, Phil and I will have an episode for you over there on our director of football candidates. And we're getting a new history pod from Tim next week. We'll have an instant reaction after the Fulham game. They are playing as we speak, by the way, so we'll see what happens there. So much to do. I do want to say, if you're in the Dallas or Los Angeles area, Cosm, the place where we did our event in LA, it's kind of like that Sphere in Vegas. It's like immersive technology. 2 free tickets in the Dome for the Fulham game in either Dallas or LA. There's no travel expense to get you there, so you're probably only going to want to enter this if you're in LA. But you can go to arsenalvisionpodcast.com/giveaway. arsenalvisionpodcast.com/giveaway. And you can enter. We'll pick it probably tomorrow, maybe Saturday, but enter quick if you want to do it, because the tickets are for Sunday's game against Fulham. And they gave us a promo code if you just ever want to go to a Cosm, ArsenalVision20. ArsenalVision20. You get 20% off. So just something you can use if you want to do it. Kind of cool. Appreciate Maz for doing that. He's a patron. He's a fan, and we love him, and he's with Cosm, and they've been great to give us stuff like that. So good luck to all. All right, enough of my nonsense. Got it done in under 3 minutes. Pretty good for me. Here with me now is Tim. You can find him on Twitter at Hello, Tim.
Hello there.
And Paul, you can find him on Twitter. Hello, Paul.
Woohoo!
Did you catch that? I said it real fast.
I did, yeah.
Good.
You had all the letters in there, not necessarily in the right sequence.
Are people really looking anyway? And now we can get on with first of all, the top of the show. I've reserved it for praising you. Tim, you wrote about Arsenal and corner kicks this week. So kudos to you, sir. How on earth did you know Arsenal would score corner kick goals? Maybe because we always do. Is that why?
Yeah, well, the funny thing is, because it was kind of a slightly light-hearted piece, I decided to put it out before the game because I thought, if we don't win this game, but the vibes aren't good, and people aren't going to want a slightly light-hearted piece. So I decided to put it out before. And the piece was about, the kind of the deliberate, I think, sense of drama and suspense that Arsenal players try to create when they take corners. So it was wonderful for me, above all, actually, that the game turned out this way. And then literally at the end, something I kind of semi-prophesized in the piece that, the fans would start. Well, actually, I had it that they might start doing "We Will Rock You" at corners, but there was the literal whoa, and of course Phil Costa, cracking out the Spanish commentators doing the Jaws soundtrack, which I absolutely adore. So yeah, it was very timely actually. So kudos to me, I think.
Yeah, these things are getting so intimidating for the opposition that Spurs fans weren't watching when we took corners. Spanish commentators, if you haven't seen it, I reshared it. Phil posted it. We're doing the like from the movie Jaws. Every time we took corners, really something special. And Paul, we'll get into the nitty gritty of the game. How do you feel about? I know, covering how the media cover us is tedious, but it does seem like we've gone through the looking glass as someone who was brought up in part on Almunia's Arsenal, on Stoke bullying us. I personally remember all the articles of bullies Stoke need to stop being allowed taking long throws. No, no, that's not what the articles were. It was soft Arsenal doesn't like it up them. How are you dealing with the bizarro world we're in now of somehow all of a sudden putting in good corners that you score from is ethically, morally inappropriate?
Yeah, I think it's funny. Like I feel like going around lecturing all my fellow Arsenal supporters not to be paying attention to the pundits and stuff, except that like 75% it's me who's out there getting irate, pissed off that Gary Neville said this. But this is one where I'm like, I'm fine with it. I like if they want to misunderstand what's coming at them, and if that wants to get into the water, and if the commentators don't really get it, and if other teams don't really understand what we are, they think we're all set pieces. Well, have at it, guys. There's going to be a nasty surprise for you. I really enjoyed this game as a game, and yeah, there's no way. And like the first half kind of sets up the second half. It's like they had us on the hook for like, is this thing ever going to break out into a real game? By the end of the second half, albeit we scored from set pieces, I had a tremendous time. I sense everybody else did. So much so, I took the morning after pill this morning just to be sure. I had so much fun yesterday.
That'll be fun to edit out and post. So, Tim, before we go any further, and look, I'll just say this. There's just no need to go too deep into why United-based media don't like Arsenal scoring from corner kicks against United, right? I think Gary Neville called Nicolas Silva the most annoying man in football, or most annoying bloke in football, whatever. Like, fine, good, I love it.
You know, self-awareness is high there, isn't it, Mr. Neville?
Yeah, and I have to say, I actually credit to Joubert and to Arsenal. I think we've tweaked what we do on corners. We don't block off the keeper really with like when Ben White's not there, but Ben White had a pretty big role last season, interfering with the keeper more or less, keeping the keeper occupied. And we've taken that part of it out. We crowd the keeper, but we don't have one person really assigned to engage with the keeper, which denies them the chance to rule out these corner kicks. The fact of the matter is, there's not a lot there for them to rule out. And so if people are going to be fixated on our corners, I think it's great. It just makes it harder for them to prepare for us. You know what I mean, Tim? We've made ourselves a more difficult proposition to prepare for. When Arsenal's coming up on 3 days rest, like Fulham have us in 3 days time, how do they prepare for an Arsenal? Because on the one hand, you have to prepare for our press, for our on-ball dominance, for our ability to overload you on the right and play through you, but you also need a significant amount of time to prepare for this corner threat. It just makes us a very difficult team to get ready for.
Yeah, I think this is a really useful and valuable kind of narrative to have out there. Actually, don't get me wrong, I do have that slight anxiety that Howard Webb, in between looking in the mirror and auditioning for Strictly Come Dancing, is sitting there thinking, there's something I've got to do to stop this happening, isn't there? But generally, again, referencing the piece I wrote, it was like a bit of fun, but at the same time, there was a serious point there that what Arsenal are clearly trying to do as well is create an aura around set pieces. That's why they take ages to take them. They want to build that anticipation and that sense of dread. I guess when they line up and look, Marco Silva will do it. He'll probably do it tonight. Actually, like he'll do like an embargo press conference. Guess what they're all going to ask him? I guarantee you he gets at least 2 questions on Arsenal's corners, like, because it's the talking point. And I think continuing to create that aura really, really helps. I remember, and actually he got a lot of flack for this answer, but I don't think it was necessarily wrong. But I remember the first time we played Stoke and Arsene Wenger was asked about the Rory Delap throw-ins, and he was like, well, yeah, obviously we've talked about it, but we don't want to obsess about it. And of course, like, they scored twice from Rory Delap throw-ins, and everyone said Wenger was an idiot. But I completely understood what he meant and think he was more or less right. But other managers are going to get asked the same stuff. And, I suspect someone like Marco Silva would be too clever to fall for this. But if that means that that's all teams focus on, if they focus all their effort on trying to draw our set piece threat, which is going to be difficult because, to your point, we're finding several different ways to do it. We didn't have Gabriel last night, and I was thinking, that's probably 50% of the threat extinguished. It was not at all. And it's different players getting involved. But if that draws more energy from teams and their preparation and their data analysts, great, because we've got other ways to score goals as well. And I'm very, very happy for teams to either not pay attention to that or for this threat to completely continue, and for teams to really, really begin to fear it, which I think they do. And I think you could see last night, I know Arsenal had 2 good chances from corners in the first half. Once they scored the first one, you could see that economies of scale of effect of Arsenal got belief, the crowd got belief in the corners, and United didn't like it. And let me tell you something, teams show you what they think of goalkeepers in these scenarios. And Arsenal treated Onana like a 10-year-old mascot who'd won a competition to go in goal, because they put everything under his crossbar. And to your point, they didn't block him off. That means they think he's crap in that situation. And they were right, and it paid off.
And for what it's worth, you can praise Nicolas Jover all you want. You can praise our emphasis and the players' willingness to practice this stuff and get good at it. None of this matters if you are not putting in flat, whipped in, accurate crosses into the absolute most terrifying place to try to defend them on every single corner. There's a great video doing the round of United practicing defending corners before the game. So they're out at the Emirates pitch and they're defending corners. Great. You know the only problem with that? The practice corners were going to like the corner of the 6-yard box in looped fashion where it could easily be headed away. Like, the delivery was so poor that all they were practicing was how to clear poorly delivered corners. Well, let me tell you something. Declan Rice and Saka don't put in poorly delivered corners. I think there was one poor corner of all the ones we took. Paul, a final thought on this. Then I do want to just talk quickly about the context of the game with Liverpool dropping points earlier, and then we can get in the nitty gritty. So a last thought on the corners?
Yeah, look, it was fascinating to see Man United practicing corners before playing us. That says everything about getting in their heads. And as you said, imperfect practice makes for imperfect execution, and we saw that. They were all over the place. There was a lot of talk about Rice's deliveries being perfect and Saka's being a little more hit and miss, and I think that's right. Rice's they are the flatter delivery you talk about. And, you know, what does Timber do? He gets in position and skins off his head, and there could have been another one. Xerxes nearly own goaled it in. We could have had 4 goals quite easily off
Thomas
this.
Partey in the first 5 minutes was point
right
blank,
in the
and if
face.
he doesn't touch it, it might go straight in.
And but there's an angle on one of Saka's deliveries, and holy moly, the whip! Right, his is not nearly as flat as Rice's.
And the
whip,
name.
yeah, the swing into Onana. Holy moly! Just unbelievable whip from that. So you're facing 2 kinds of different crosses from either side. And maybe that's why Saka's is a little bit more, can move around a bit, and Rice is all about perfection. Saka's is more about how much whip and how far will it come in. We had a whole bunch of corners here. We played for corners. They were giving us corners. They set up to give us the edges, and like so many other games in the past, we might have been reduced to banging in crosses or frustration of trying to get through the middle. Well, we can hit you several different ways depending on how you want to set up against us. But for me, the whole thing is much more organic than we play some football, and then there's this corner set piece thing. The one and the same. We've talked about this before. The open play begets the corners, and corners can turn into open play, and it maintains the pressure and the pressing. We could easily have had open play goals in this, and lots of them. So,
yeah.
Did you see Amarim's comment afterwards? He said something like, and I think he's probably right. He said Saka and Martinelli often dribble on the outside because he thinks that Arsenal are trying to deliberately force corners, and I wouldn't be surprised. And why wouldn't you if you're that good at them? I wouldn't be surprised if that were true.
Yeah, and by the way, whether you want to critique Arsenal's chance creation from open play or not, be my guest. I think it's maybe an interesting discussion, but the critique is certainly overemphasized by our rivals. Whether you want to critique that, whether you want to talk about the corner kicks or whatnot, at the end of the day, what I don't hear a lot of is what I know we'd be hearing, which is Manchester United just put together one of the meekest performances in the history of this rivalry. 5 shots, 1 on target. Scott looked this up, said in the entire FBref database, it's the fewest shots and shots on target they've registered, period, that he could find. Okay? They put up 0.2 expected goals to our 2.1 expected goals. So whatever you want to say about what we did, where were they? They didn't participate in this game from an attacking standpoint. Now, that's in part because of how good we are. But any analysis of the game has to start with the fact that we monstered them. We blew them away. Set Piece FC blew Manchester United away. We played cat and mouse with them for a half. We held them at arm's length like they were the little brother. We got a goal, and after that, things started to perk up. There were bright moments from Odegaard in the second half. There were bright moments from Rice throughout the second half. It was brilliant. I just think this was a game where a much better, more dominant team kept it close for a while and then put our foot on the accelerator and just blew them away. And that was it. So, Tim, before we get into the nitty-gritty, as I said we would do and we still will do, this though is the kind of game where mentality can really show up, because Liverpool dropped points and were in the process of dropping points as this was going on. And I do sort of wonder, because the games were taking place overlapping, and I wonder if the halftime team talk incorporated anything of what was going on between Liverpool and Newcastle, or if there was any observation that I doubt Mikel would want that seeping in. But, this is a big, big turning point in the season, because if Liverpool do win that game, having been down and come back and won it away in a place where we'd already lost away, and there'd be so much narrative around it's their year. But the way Kelleher helps them sort of throw it away when they had it late and they drop points in painful fashion, and then we go on to beat United, it feels like a really pivotal moment. So from a psychological standpoint, being there at the ground, I'm sure getting messages fed to you about what was happening, or if you were even able to get cell signal about what's going on at St. James's Park, harkens back to the 1-1 at St. James's Park Day when Spurs fans got fooled into thinking they had snuck into the top 4. Another great moment. What do you think about the psychology of this day and beating United, and how exciting and fun that is, coupled with what had happened at St. James's Park?
Yeah, it's interesting. I didn't actually know the Liverpool score until I got on the train and I looked it up, because to your point, they complete little, like there was an overlap. So like the game hadn't finished by the time half time came around. So I was like, I knew it was like 3-2 with 10 minutes to go. And I guess but personally, I didn't really think about it. It wasn't really in my mind. But I don't know whether the players did. I think they read out that it was 3-2 and that the game hadn't finished. So like the players couldn't escape that. So, whether they knew that it had gone to 3-3, I don't know. I kind of doubt actually that was a factor, because I think they just felt we've got to pick this up. And I felt what was kind of more interesting for this game psychologically. I mean, there's a few things there. Like when Declan Rice was interviewed afterwards, he didn't know what the point gap was. He was like, "Is it sort of like," which I take at face value as quite genuine, that like they're not really thinking in those terms.
Yeah,
I had actually at the FSA Awards on Monday night, had a conversation with Charlie Eccleshare from The Athletic, who now covers tennis. But we're talking about how like even the FA Cup draw, it was like Liverpool have got Accrington Stanley, and Chelsea have got Morecambe, and Tottenham have got Tamworth, and City have got Salford, and we get bloody Man United in the middle of like a few like difficult fixtures, and maybe we've got a League Cup semi-final and all that, and we were talking about how it just feels like every like coin flip is kind of going against us a little bit. With the way things have fallen. So I think perhaps psychologically this was important. The perhaps, it's not all going to keep going Liverpool's way. It might go their way enough still, but it's like, okay, it's not all going to go their way. And what was quite interesting as well is, we talk about Liverpool perhaps not having had injuries to key players. I mean, Alisson's been out and no one's been talking about it because they've probably got the best in fact, I don't think there's any probably about it. They've got the best backup goalkeeper in the Premier League who'd start for most Premier League teams. So that's kind of minimised that. But he made a mistake this time. And that was perhaps the first time it was like, maybe Alisson wouldn't have made that mistake and they'd have held on to the points. So, but I felt actually I won't go into this in a lot of detail, but I actually felt psychologically what was more interesting about this game was we beat Sporting 5-1 last week. And that's Amorim's team with Amorim's system. And actually, I think sometimes you can be at a disadvantage with that. If you smash it, I know it's not the same team, but you're playing the same system and effectively the manager's team. I think if you smash a team and then play them again a week later, there are a lot more learning points for the team that gets smashed. And I bet Amorim and his staff would have been looking at that very closely. And we can go into this later, but United sprung some surprises, actually, in the way they lined up. And I do think that caught Arsenal maybe a little bit cold in the first half.
Well, let's start to get into it. And I'll just, before we do, say this. I love beating United. Like anybody of our relative ages has bad memories of that team, has good memories as well, right? Of a very heated rivalry. And I guess with the benefit of distance, an enjoyable rivalry. But I also think there have been too many times in the last decade when we've faced not very good United teams and not done the business. And now we're doing the business for 4 consecutive games, right? And I think that's something that I really, really enjoy, because it's all well and good to know United are worse than us from a larger scale standpoint, but you still want to beat them when you play them so you can enjoy them being worse. The one thing you don't want is, they're terrible, but they beat us, or we didn't beat them. So I love that we won this game. I love that we won this game with something riding on it. I think that this little shift in momentum in the Premier League gives us the chance to now make Liverpool feel like they're being chased. Not that 7 points is nothing, 9 points was a lot, but this was a day you'd probably circle and say some points need to be made up here, especially with them having beaten a very weak City team at the weekend. And they were, and that was critical. And we'll see where that leads if any doubt creeps in. Paul, so let's get into a few things. First of all, Mikel had to make some important choices. There was no Gabriel. There was no Calafiori. And Partey was back, although I think there's some real question about how fit he was, frankly, the way he started that game. And he made the decision to go next man up, both at left center back and left back. He went with Kiwior at center back, and he went with Zinchenko at left back. And I think it certainly would have been fair for anybody who was nervous about that. I had a little bit of nerves around that. He did bring Martinelli back in. And Partey, Rice, Odegaard in the midfield, Timber and Saliba on the other side. So that was the big decision. He could have gone Partey at right back and thrown Timber over to the left-hand side, but he went next man up. He trusted his hierarchy. And I think ultimately, when it's all said and done, it paid off. So what do you think about that decision?
Yeah, well, he also had Rice and Martinelli on that side of the pitch, both of whom provide excellent cover.
It's a great point.
And I think that would have steeled his decision making there. I thought Kiwior was solid in the first half. Right, he had a moment or two. Saliba took the central distribution spot there. Kiwior often pushed over like a left centre back so that Zinchenko could go into midfield. And, Zinchenko was okay in the first half. I think we all got a bit more confidence in the second half and they started playing it around. We saw a bit more Zinchenko. I think the second half for Kiwior was the best half I've seen him play for us. His defending was clever, anticipatory. I think that's the word. Lots of clever balls, clip balls up the line, into the channels, in behind for Martinelli or whoever. He was on it. That was the most confident, which, given what he's been through the last, whatever, you could say, third of a season or season and a third, this journey he's been on where he's been on the benches and halfway out the door, fair play to him, because they were certainly trying to hit us down that side. And I thought he did. It's the first time I've watched Kiwior in forever where I'm like, actually, I'm starting to feel confidence. Every time he's in the right position, he makes the right move, he gets the ball, he steals it. Now, the first half, a little bit more conservative. Like, our left side wasn't doing very much, and you can argue it back and forward. I think we hadn't played United in this circumstance, and we were still kind of figuring out, do we really go for them, or we just kind of go for them? And these players that we know are in different spots. I think we're just bloody confused in the first half. I didn't see a huge change coming out in the second half. Mikel talked about tweaks and stuff. I think the tweaks might have been more, look, triggers, right? Not changing the system, not moving anybody around, but like when this guy, stand a bit closer to this guy when we're doing this, press together. Because the one thing I saw in the first half was we were miles apart from each other when we were looking to press or build play. It just seemed like we had distributed our players around the pitch as opposed to what you normally see us doing, hunting in packs, playing in packs. And so, I just think the second half was more about being on it, being together, tempo, getting the guys into the same area of the pitch so they could make things happen when they were going to make something happen. And the confidence started to flow through the team. The set piece goal, and to Tim's point, he made this point in the chat, that set piece was good enough for Jehovah, the one we scored the goal from. Sorry, had to get it in there. I didn't want to waste it into the ether. Nice one, Tim. That came after about like 7 minutes into the game. I think it was like 52 minutes.
Yeah.
And we didn't sit back. We didn't start. The football started to flow. It was already flowing before that. The second half was what we expected in the first half, but it didn't happen. We postponed play for 45 minutes, basically.
Yeah. It's an interesting one too, because I wonder if Amorim regrets not going for this a little more. Against Everton, they had Diallo as the right wing back and Marcus Rashford as the right part of that sort of front three thing they do, the two behind the one. And in this game, they went with Mount and Dallo. And that's the side attacking the Kiwior Zinchenko side. And it's obviously a much more conservative choice from Amorim. So, Tim, you want to maybe speak on that? The way that change may have influenced what we were expecting and how we were expecting to play and what we wound up seeing in the first half, which was very much a stalemate where I think we kind of cat and mouse them a little. Every time they had the ball, that's when we looked most dangerous because they did not seem comfortable playing out. But we didn't have a lot of controlled, deep possession against them in the first half, which you would have expected.
Yeah, definitely. They've done different things with their right side in the two Premier League games. So first game, they play Rashford through the middle. They play Fernandes as the right 10 and Diallo on the right. And then, to your point against Everton, it's Rashford as the right 10, Diallo as the right wing back. And when you think it's going to be Kiwior and Zinchenko, I, like you, fully expected to see Rashford and Diallo on that side, and it's not what happened at all. They switched Dallo over, and Dallo is usually the left wing back, and he's usually much more conservative, sits in a bit more like a left back, inverts into midfield. And given what Arsenal do on their right side, I fully expected United to stay quite conservative over there. But it was actually quite interesting that not only were they conservative on their right, at least initially, and I know Clive made this point on the instant reaction, they were clearly planning to power up later and think, right, then we'll throw Diallo and Rashford on. But they put Malacia at left wing back, which was interesting because he tends to be a bit more enterprising. And actually, that's what I really didn't expect, particularly without Martinez, because I was thinking, how are United, like they lost Mainu and Martinez to suspensions. Mainu, who cares? Martinez was a loss for them, really, and particularly not having that left-sided centre-back. I did wonder, I didn't expect to see Malacia there. I thought, they'll play Dallo, and it might be like, Delict on the left side, and they'll keep Dallo close. That's not what they did. And they dropped. The other thing was how they're going to replace Mainu, and this is how bad they are in midfield. They dropped Fernandes back into the double pivot because Eriksen, I think, was not available, and he's very slow anyway. And they just don't have any ball players there. So they kind of dropped Fernandes back. So there are a few things they did quite differently. And you can see the way they played in the first half. They didn't go for it at all. They just wanted to keep the ball away, get the crowd frustrated. We got Sporting with a lot of pressing triggers as well. And I think United were like, okay, we're definitely not doing any of that. And they pushed their food around the plate. And definitely, I think Arsenal would have gone in at half-time and gone, okay, they're doing a load of stuff we didn't think they'd do, and let's just pass the ball more quickly. And basically, it's when you play a mid-table team at home and you've had a slow first half, what do you say as a manager? Like, I think Arne Slot said something like this when Liverpool played maybe Southampton at home and they were losing at half-time. and they came out and won 2-1. And he said some team talks at halftime are tactical and some are just run more and pass the ball faster. And I think like our team talk was that, because the other thing about United, Elliot, is if you look at the number of goals they score, if you go 1-0 up against Manchester United, you've got to draw at the least, because they are, I think they're 14th or 15th for goals scored in the league. They've scored 4 fewer than Wolves. And that's pretty much what they did last season. Last season, they were about 14th, 13th for goals scored in the league. They do not have goals in the team. And so you go 1-0 up, you've got to draw at least. And I do think Arsenal, that gave them a bit of security to really push on.
Yeah, and there were some chances in the first half. I mean, the irony, you talked about the press and them not wanting to get caught with it. Onana gives it straight to Zinchenko, who plays it back to Kai, back to Martinelli, and the ball's in the net. It's just offside. We get a corner. Partey has it hit him and go out instead of going in. We get another corner. Zinchenko shot is blocked, falls to Martinelli, and I think Martinelli should do better, candidly. We'll probably talk about him just a bit more in a moment. But KG first half for sure. And I understand the frustration, right? Because especially given that during parts of the first half, Liverpool were in the process of taking the lead back against Newcastle. This felt at that moment like maybe it was going to be the opposite kind of night that we were hoping for. So I can understand why there'd be nerves and anxiety in the ground. But Paul, even as sort of middling as that first half was, I still think there's certain players that stepped up. And for me, Saliba and Timber were two of them. And Saliba was just brilliant in this whole game. When you've got a left side of your defense that's all changed and a left-sided center back who grew into the game brilliantly, we'll come to Kiwior, but let's leave that for a moment. I think Kiwior in the first half definitely looked like a guy playing within himself and didn't want to be the one to make the mistake. A lot of passes back to Raya, a lot of safe passes to Saliba. Saliba showed personality. He played 1-2s up the pitch into the attacking third. He had so many moments where he just calmly dealt with the situation, but kept it. And I think combined with Raya and Raya's willingness to play the ball on the ground in space, that made that first half more comfortable than it might have been otherwise. So thoughts on Saliba in particular? You can cover his whole game, but I think even in the first half, he was really a leader in the way he played.
Yeah, two players stood out as actually playing in the first half, like having a level and determining the game. And they were both in the same area of the pitch. Saliba and Timber,
Yep.
I thought were both ballers, right? They both took the ball, beat a man, this is your centre back, moving into midfield, 1-2ing his way up the wing, attacking the back line. And the game needed something. We needed to be able to show we were better than them. And it was kind of tippy-tapping around. Fair play to Onana. It's not something I like to say very often, but he's super good with the ball at his feet in terms of risk-taking. And that was their thing. We've seen this before with them, where we were afraid to fully engage with pressing their lines, right? And they play it around the back. Well, they shouldn't be able to play around the back, except it was fairly cohesive. They were pretty good knocking it around. And in the first half, we didn't fully commit. We pressed, but we didn't take the risk. And in the second half, what we needed to do it wasn't all about the front line of pressing, right? It's Saliba and Kiwior building confidence, because those guys have to step into midfield as Thomas Partey and Rice push forward as the wingers do that. There's less and less cover at the back, and we had a super high line by the end of this game. Our pressing numbers double in the second half. And that's largely down to the guys in front being able to push, knowing that the gaps won't be behind them and they won't be played through, because Bruno Fernandes as your double pivot will kill you if you give him too much space. And they couldn't get anything off against us. And anything that got off against us abandoned all hope, all ye who enter, because if it goes anywhere near William Saliba or anybody around William Saliba, he's going to mop it up, spin around, set the play off in the other direction. In the first half, he was a rock, he was a baller, he was stepping into midfield, he became the free man. Timber did some of that. And in the second half, they were just masterful. They sprung. There's one passage of play, and it just kills me. It ends up with Trossard, but it starts with Saliba in our right-hand full-back corner, deep in our pitch. And there's 3 or 4 clever little passes involving Saliba and God knows who else, but also Odegaard, Havertz to get it off to the... And I'm just praying, let this be the goal. I'll give up any other goals that might be coming for the rest of the season. This was going to be a worldy goal, and it was just emblematic of how Saliba can extinguish all threat so that the opponent's like, well, we need to come up with something else apart from actually attacking the back line. We'll go down this other side as far as we can, get as far away as possible from Saliba. His coverage at the back is phenomenal. It's like watching him and Rice. It's like being up against Djokovic or Nadal in terms of their baseline coverage. They get to everything. They anticipate everything. And in the end, you stop trying to beat them on the back line. You do a dink. You try and cheat. You try and chip at the net or charge the net because you're not getting anywhere with Saliba. And there's almost nobody in this league who will fancy going up against him.
Yeah. And I think it's a beautiful night for him to get his flowers because a lot of attention has rightly been on Gabriel this season, actually, who has been brilliant. And I think Saliba came back from his summer exertions and the international breaks not at his best. And Gabriel's been so good. But, this was his chance to shine, and he gets the goal off his butt, and he loves a good celebration, which he gave. It was beautiful. Tim, I think I'm starting to recognize when a poor Arsenal performance is coming. Or poor might be overstating it, but the one thing about the first half, right, is like when we don't move the ball with tempo and intent, you can see it a mile away. Everyone's taking an extra touch. Everyone's overthinking, and the distances aren't right. And Mikel talked about how our distances were not good in that first half, and I couldn't agree more. When Partey had the ball, it felt like he had to go a long way to get it to a teammate. Odegaard and Saka weren't exchanging those little 1-2s. Things felt spread out. I don't know if it's a byproduct of the back five system and Amarim had us stretched across the pitch to cover them or what the case was with why our distances weren't good. I'd have to watch it again, but it just felt like the pace was off. And Thomas Partey in particular, I thought looked well off the pace, maybe unfit in the first half, sort of his first physically not up to it game of the season.
Got on him a little bit as well with a couple of passes. The first time I've heard it for pretty much any Arsenal player. Well, maybe Zinchenko end of last season. First time I'd heard in a while. The second or third misplaced pass, there was the frustration, and then the next time he gets it, there's the kind of everyone waiting for the mistake to come. And I think with him, I think Clive put it you could probably tell he hadn't trained, and he probably got stronger as the game went on because it was almost like training. But you're right, the distances weren't right. I also just kind of think Arsenal didn't know what to do because they didn't know what United were going to do. United did some stuff they probably didn't expect. And when United are just passing the ball around the centre circle and happy to do that, they probably didn't anticipate that. And, if none of your team talk or none of your prep or none of your instructions have really told you how to deal with that, what do you do as a player? You probably do just sit off and go, okay, we haven't really been given any instructions for how to deal with this. And I think it's pretty clear at half time, Arteta just went, sick 'em, go for 'em kind of thing. And they went, okay, boss, all right. And that does happen. Sometimes teams spring a bit of a surprise on you. But yeah, I think distances weren't right. You could see that they were really crowding on our right side, which you'd kind of expect, I think, and then they were much more conservative than we thought they'd be on the right. They didn't play Mason Mount as a number 10 because they expected him to score a goal or do anything or play a through ball. He's a runner. That's what he is. And that's why they put him there, and they dropped Fernandes back because they wanted to keep the football in deep areas. That tells you everything about their priorities, that they dropped Fernandes back to play keep ball and then put Mount forward, who is an off-ball player, who's a runner and a presser. So, I do think to some extent, and United haven't done that. They haven't done that in any of the other games. So how would Arsenal know that was what they were going to do? So I think you're right. I think they probably tweak some stuff that I'm not clever enough to see about distances and things like that. But really, the first thing I noticed in the second half was, the ball's moving a lot more quickly, and it's one touch and it's boom, boom. And there's lots of there was a ball at one point, it might have been from Zinchenko in the left channel where it's a loose ball. He doesn't even take a touch. It's just bang forward. And yeah, it really was you know, I'd like to think that Arteta's halftime team talk was, lads, it's Man United.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is, I put that message out before the game because I think we have played the badge at times, and this is not a team you need to be intimidated by. And there's so many improvements at halftime on individual performance level, Paul, that it's sort of hard to cover every one of them. But one that I think improved at halftime, but was also good throughout the game, but really shined was Declan Rice. First of all, we covered it. His set piece delivery was stunning, but I think he covered so much ground in the second half, and he got closer to his teammates and he helped stitch things together. And I think everybody's really trying to see what Rice's role is, and he's really under the microscope because he's such a big player. And there's that question of whether he'll evolve to the 6 and Marino will become the 8, or if he's going to stay at the 8. The point is, you just want to see a Declan Rice show personality and be involved in the game, and he really grew into this game. And I think his influence was one of the deciding factors in the second half. Do you see it similarly?
Yeah, he looked like he was having the time of his life. He had a big grin on his face at times. He was putting it all out there, and he had it all to put out there, right? We haven't seen that level of athleticism, trust in his energy and body. He was just going for it. He was covering large tracts of space. I don't know what a Declan Rice game. I don't know how to define exactly a Declan Rice game,
Yeah,
but you
I know
know
what you
when you
mean.
see it.
Yeah.
And it was that second half was just a playground for him. He was all over the place, covering back to my baseline analogy. It was just like you couldn't get the ball past him, Djokovic, Nadal style, sliding into, I actually have a picture of him sliding down into the corners behind the fullback, behind the centre back to nip out. I think it was Ahmad who was about to get past whoever, Zinchenko, Kiwior, or whatever. And Rice is just on. And the next minute he's streaking up the pitch. There's the breaking lines, feeding Martinelli. Then breathing, panting as we get the ball for the corner, but he's ready to bang in the cross. And just 45 minutes of heaven for, I think, Declan Rice. He was great. He got the man of the match award. I don't know how you figure that one out. There's probably 3 or 4 of them could have had it.
Yeah,
But he was
Saliba
a
would have been a good
dominant player.
shout. Saliba would have been a
Yeah.
good shout, and he gets the goal. But I think also Rice, you talk about the mental strain that those corners put on the opposition, and it was Rice's corners predominantly, as you said, that I think were really putting them under a lot of pressure all night.
Yeah, it seemed like this was one of those games you can picture that more than anything, it was the personality he brought to this, not just to himself, to everybody else around him. It's something you see with the Martin Odegaard factor. You have to remove him from the team and then bring him back before you realize all of the ways that he impacts the way everybody sparks around him. And those two guys drove on this team in the second half, their personality, the way they played. And he was the standard bearer for the midfield, for the cover, for the charging forward. And Odegaard up front was Gene on the crowd, waving his arms. That was what they want. They wanted to feed the fire, and Rice was the vehicle.
Yeah, he was sensational, and I think we're gonna have more of an evolution of this midfield over time. But in the last week, I think we've seen Jorginho can play and be important. We've seen Declan Rice really elevate. Martin Odegaard has played at a great level. But then in this game, I don't think he was the story of this game. And other players picked him up. I mean, he did have the one moment. The Kai Havertz, I think, near post shot right at Onana. I think Havertz should probably do a little better there, actually. Maybe low and hard across or lift it more. But Odegaard just takes someone's soul with the way he turns and gets that ball to Kai. And even when he's not totally on it, he has a couple of moments in a game where he just drips that kind of quality on the ball.
He actually had lots of moments. I went back and had a look at it because I had the same vibe about it. What you notice with Odegaard when he's imperfect is his imperfections. Tim will be able to tell us, but these conditions did not look that great. There were every now and then you'd see somebody kicking a ball and there'd be a big splash as if they're kicking it out of a puddle. The ball was kind of it was all kind of uneven, and maybe he was beginning to feel the first bit of fatigue since he's been back and he's been on it. He was a little off, but you go back and look at it, man, there's so much good stuff he does, especially in the second half. So many things that spark off him. But yeah, it wasn't at his level. There's no two ways. He's been absolute perfection, sublime, the best player in the league for the last few games. This one was a little off, but be careful with the Martin Odegaard baby with the bathwater. He was still he was like 90% Odegaard in terms of, he still had 90% of those moments instead of 100%. He was really good. And he really did push us on. Like, our pressing, as we all know, has everything to do Martin Odegaard.
Yes.
And in the second half, how did we stay on them? It's him and the boys. Dirty Mike and the Boys. What's that movie?
That's a movie?
Yeah.
Is that a movie you saw on a website that you're supposed to use
no.
cookie blockers?
It's homeless guys in the back of a car. It's the funniest thing. Anyway, it's Martin Odegaard and the boys.
Got it.
And they were the biz. They were the biz, Elliot.
I'm looking this up.
It's fantastic.
Is it the other guys?
Yeah. Will Ferrell.
Yes. Okay.
It is the funniest thing ever put on.
My favorite thing in the movie The Other Guys, for anyone who's seen it, is aim for the bushes. That is one of the funniest things. I don't know why. Just didn't see it coming. Absolutely hilarious.
We're having fun, Elliot. Yeah. Okay.
We have to talk about Kiwior, of course. And I also want to ask a question about Martinelli. Before we do that, it's already well past the point where I should be telling you about brands that are going to improve your life, and I apologize for that. So the first one, of course, is NordVPN. This one's easy. You're going to want to watch videos that are geo-locked, and this is the app that lets you do it. You're going to want to be able to browse as if you're in another country. So when I go to England and I want to watch the 3 p.m. kickoffs, I browse back in the US and I can watch all the football, which kind of weird that that's how that works, but it is how it works. Maybe you want to watch a highlights of the day from the matches show, or there's something that you want to watch on social media that's geo-locked. You simply click the app, say I want to browse in this country, boom, you're in that country, and you can watch what you want to watch. You can even sign up for streaming services in that country, which may save you money, and then you can watch them from back home. So that's cool. There's also threat protection, and as football fans, we do use some links that may be described as dodgy, and sometimes you just want to be sure you're protected from threats. So grab your exclusive NordVPN deal by going to nordvpn.com/ArsenalVision to get a huge discount off your NordVPN plan plus 4 additional months on top. It's completely risk-free with NordVPN's 30-day money-back guarantee. That's nordvpn.com/ArsenalVision. Do it now. And Manscaped, it's not just a joke anymore, because I'm not just talking about your privates anymore. If you want me to talk about your privates, so email me, we can have a chat about them. But this is about your face, and your face is not your privates. That's Anatomy 101, folks. But this is the Chairman. The Chairman Pro is an electric foil shaver for your face, and it has 2 different heads for getting the different parts of your face, because your face has different parts. You can get under the nose, you can get the neck. It goes fully smooth. It works in the water. It has a locking button. It has an LED screen on it that'll tell you, like a digital display that'll tell you how many minutes you have left. It'll go for 75 minutes on a single charge. I just love it. The pivoting head makes it easy to reach all the areas you need to reach. They call it a flex adjust technology, and it has the skin safe technology as well. I use it. I love it. And you can travel for a long time without ever even needing to charge it. So get your Chairman Pro, maybe a Christmas gift or a holiday gift for someone in your family this time of year. Go to manscaped.com. Join over 11 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped by using the code ArsenalVision for 20% off and free shipping. That's manscaped.com. Code ArsenalVision for 20% off free shipping. Do it now, Tim. Is that number there?
Indeed.
Got it. Tim.
Yes.
Let's talk Kiwior.
Yes, let's.
Look, there is this thing that I do, I admit, where I get frustrated that the backup isn't as good as the starter, but the backup isn't going to be as good as the starter. That's just how it works. Now, Clive often talks about don't think in first 11s, and sure, there are certain players, between Marino and Rice and Partey and Jorginho, they're all good players. They can all come in and play. Between Leo and Martinelli, sure, they're all good players. They can all come in and play. But between Gabriel and Kiwior, Gabriel's the starter. You know what I mean? It's that simple. And if Tommy was playing, maybe Tommy would be the backup. The point is, find me a Premier League team that's got to play their 3rd choice left center back, which I think it is fair to say he would be, or maybe even 4th choice, because Calafiori might be the 2nd or 3rd choice, and can go up in a big game and get a confident, assured performance out of that player. That just doesn't happen. It really does not happen. And Kiwior, I think, was conservative in the first half, maybe played within himself, grew into this game, started to show personality, made some really important, good passes. He had that chest back to Raya that I loved, because that's the play of someone who's feeling it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. A nervous player, what do they do there? They punt it out for another corner, or they dawdle on the ball, they let it drop. he was feeling it. Chests that back to Raya, just a sign of, I'm in the moment, I'm in the game, I feel confident about my football. I loved watching him blossom, and I think probably rightly, we were concerned about him as a left back. But I think what we've seen is that Kiwior is a center back, and when he's been asked to play there, increasingly we're seeing a player that is perfectly serviceable for us in that position. I thought he showed great personality as the game wore on.
Yeah, he did. He played himself into it, which is what I think he should have done in his situation. If you've not got the rhythm of game time and you're in and out of the team, you're not playing every week, then that's kind of what you should do. Really, it's a sensible thing to do. Don't make a mistake. And then as the game goes on and Arsenal settled into it, to your point, yeah, and we saw, I know it was against Preston, but we saw against Preston, like he got a couple of assists, like he can play the ball. He really can play. And I think we saw last season, like I think the other thing we underestimate or undervalue about backup players is that you can't show your best when you don't have the rhythm of games. Like Kiwior, you got like 10 games in a row at left back, at the beginning of this year. Look, fine. Absolutely fine. Like no problem there whatsoever. Got a run of games. And this time, I think there were a couple of things that suited him. First of all, as we discussed, United didn't really go for the jugular on that side like they might have. If they'd started Rashford and Diallo on that side, maybe there'd have been a bit more stress. Maybe they'd have got Zinchenko on a silly yellow card in the first half instead of the second, and then a bit of doubt creeps in. But United don't do anything, which is great for Kiwior because, and like I said earlier, United don't score many goals anyway. So in like the defensive sense, you are playing a lower mid-table attack. That is what United have been producing for 2 years, lower mid-table numbers. So it's like I think they've got quality in other parts of their team. Not loads, but some quality in other parts of their team. Like Bruno Fernandes, I think, unfortunately, is a very, very good attacker, but he was playing back in the centre circle. So you're basically, in an attacking sense, you're playing like the equivalent of maybe, I don't know, Everton. That's they've got a very similar number of goals to Manchester United.
And fair point.
And if we were playing at home to Everton and Kiwior played, you'd be like, that'll be fine, really, wouldn't you? So, but I also think the other thing that suited him about the setup was having, a left back like Zinchenko, who's obviously going to do Zinchenko things and invert into midfield, and it kind of turned it into a back three. So then you've got Saliba. Saliba's probably man of the match in this game. I think Rice got it. And I think what we're beginning to see is we're finding those players again who maybe hit a little bit of a relative slump after the Euros, who are back on it. But I think like it kind of turned it into a back three. So Saliba's the central pin. That's why he was everywhere, because he wasn't really just at right centre back. He was on both sides. Timber kind of tucking in as a right centre back, and Kiwior as a lefty in a back three. And that, all this kind of, is he a left back? Is he a left centre back? Like left centre back in a back three is probably his like kind of ideal position. And that's kind of what we asked of him, to defend that channel. So he wasn't, particularly in the first half, he wasn't like dead central. He wasn't defending his 6-yard box, and United weren't putting the ball there anyway, but he was corner of the area, and I think that was a nice angle for him as well. And he absolutely grew into the game. Thought he was really good.
Yeah, and it is just the case right now that with White out for 2 months and Calafiori, unfortunately showing that he's struggling a little bit to put together a run of fitness, and Tomiyasu, training away from the group. This probably won't be the last time we have to rely on Kiwior at center back, if not through injury, just through rotation. Might it be a chance?
Those cup games, he'll almost certainly play against United again, FA Cup third round, like
Palace
yeah.
in the League Cup.
He's going to get some football in the next kind of 6 weeks. Whatever happens injury wise.
And the idea, again, just so we're clear, right? The idea isn't, is he as good as Gabriel? That's not the goal. The goal is, can he play and keep our level where we're able to do what we need to do on the pitch? And I think he showed as the game wore on that he could do that. Paul, I want to hit a bit of a sour note, just quickly. Nothing too harsh, but I think it is worth a conversation. It's another game where I just found myself not so impressed with how the left-hand side always worked. And in this particular case, I think a lot of that, for me at least, was with Martinelli. And it's a player who now I find myself looking at and saying, are you adding enough layers to your game at this point? Have you evolved as a player from when you broke through to hit a level that I really think keeps you the clear guy we want to pick for big games out on the left? He had a moment here where he was in sort of against, was it Maguire? I think. And he had a chance to kind of cut it inside and maybe set himself for a shot or get past Maguire and just sort of took the early shot and got the corner. I think he had a couple of situations where he sort of was willing to just smack it off the defender and get a corner. I think sometimes he slows it down when he needs to speed it up, speeds it up when he needs to slow it down. You know what I mean? When he needs to wait for his support. And in general, it's just the point that, I look at like Leo, for example, that pass he makes in the West Ham game to Kai. Well, that's a 1 in 100 pass. I get it. That's not something that you do every game. But even though I'm not always as sold on Trossard either, that's a player that has, I think, some sophistication and layers to his game and what he brings. And at the moment, for me, when I watch Martinelli, it feels a little one-dimensional. And this is the problem with conversation about players, is I think they often lack the nuance. I think Martinelli is a good player and a valuable asset to our team. But as the player that we've kind of expected to become our star on the left to complement our superstar on the right, I think he may be finding a level that is more someone who can contribute, but I'm not sure that this is the level of someone who's going to regularly go start for Arsenal, winning the league on the left. So maybe I'm making this too big picture. I understand. What do you think about his performance and the extent to which he's adding enough variability to his game?
Yeah, no, I think that's right. Certainly in my mind, I would see Arteta looking at next summer saying, where am I going to upgrade my attack? And thinking we could have a lot more threat from the left-hand side than we have at the moment. I've heard various people talk about Martinelli, and the word that always seems to crop up is dimensions, right? One dimension, two dimension in terms of how he plays. And I see that. I still think he can be a super useful contributor from that side. But my theory is that Mikel Merino has the map for the left eight. And until we see Merino playing a run of games with Martinelli on his left, we won't see the best of Martinelli, because it's not. We saw a Rice game yesterday. That's what a Rice game looks like. But still didn't really do Martinelli any huge favors in terms of the clear. Look what Saka has around him. Like, he's got Odegaard and Timber and maybe Partey pushing up behind them and Saliba. And it doesn't matter how many defenders they push over that side. You now have where does Havertz hang out? He hangs out over beside Saka. Look at Havertz's touch map. 4 out of 5 games, he's almost in the where you think Martin Odegaard's going to be. So it's all set up to spring Saka. On the other hand, that means there should be space on Martinelli's side, and maybe he needs to do more with that space when he's got them 1v1. And maybe that's a little bit confidence, but confidence or no confidence, if you're kind of around the edges of being top level or a worldie, you'll make something happen. So he certainly needs to do more himself. But I'm a very selfish person. I care about this season and our results. And for this season, we need to see what happens when Mikel Merino, who has the map of that area and the patterns and the triangles, and I move out to the left and you move into the right, and I open up a channel for a pass for you, and just that dynamism. He needs somebody to play with. And that's not... Declan Rice has a lot going on, right? We see him more as a kind of a second pivot, and he's doing and he's covering for Zinchenko, and Zinchenko stepping in. But certainly you'd expect more from Zinchenko and Martinelli in that environment. But Havertz is stealing over to the other side. I just think the left side it's one more season where so far it's like we're not really focused on optimizing that side, because we want to put all the pieces in place from the right hand side, and the left will feed off the scraps or the space. But yeah, it's this was my pancake analogy, right? You're making the pancakes. The first pancake, you throw it away. The first half, throw that pancake away. This Martinelli performance, it's not the first pancake of him, but it feels like when you just throw it away, you don't overthink it.
Yeah.
This was not his best game. He really got no change out of it apart from driving us up the pitch, getting a few corners, giving them something to think about, but he didn't really beat anybody or do anything in my recollection.
Yeah. I mean, he was 0 of 3 on his take-ons, tackled all 3 times. He was, I mean, in 70 minutes, 6 of 11 passing. That's 54%. He had a couple of shots. One, he blasts over from the corner where I think he should do better. And the other is the one he hits it straight at Maguire. Yeah. And it's tough because, like I said, good player. But is that elite ceiling that I think we just presumed was in there? Is that going to show itself? I know Paul's got a bounce, so we're going to throw Paul on mute. Thank you, pause.
Woohoo!
All right, we'll throw Paul on mute here for a second. Tim, do you want to weigh in on that just for a second? I mean, this is a tough one. I think you always want to be evaluating, updating your opinions, updating your analysis, and that includes when players surprise you to the good, right? So when a Kiwior comes in and has a good game, you want to update your analysis, right? When Kai Havertz, who started slow for us, starts to come on, you want to update your analysis. I've been a huge Martinelli fan, and I continue to be a fan of his and think he's a good player. But there was a time when I presumed that his trajectory was, if not quite Saka's, in that similar vein. And I just think when I look at the player he is today and evaluate, has he taken steps forward? Has he added pieces to his game? I don't know that I'm seeing that. And I think it's a fair question to start to ask what that development trajectory looks like for a player who, is not a kid anymore.
Yeah, he's flatlined again in terms of he's got himself out of, again, the relative slump he was in earlier this year when I think Trossard just came in and took his place, and that was that Trossard hit a real purple patch, and I think he got out of that, but it hasn't been a linear, he's going to go, but it's still not the player I saw this time 2 years ago, for sure. I think, again, he may be a victim in this game of the fact that United's right-hand side did not at all look like people thought. And actually, there was a point in the second half where he races back and wins a defensive header. And
he's always good for that, isn't he?
Yeah. And I was like, I think that's almost why he was rested against West Ham, because we were expecting Diallo and Rashford on that side. And as Paul made the point earlier, it was Rice left day, it was Martinelli left wing. I think Arsenal were expecting United to be a bit more enterprising on that side, and it didn't happen. But, to your point, if we're picking Martinelli because he tracks back well, that's not what I'd want. That's not where I'd envisage the conversation getting to.
Right.
And, we talk about, and I think it's right that the left side of the team, it never seems to settle down. Whoever we have at left back never stays fit. And then the left eight never. So I do accept all that. But again, if we're perhaps holding him to a slightly unfair standard, albeit you and I both thought that he would perhaps go to this standard, and I've said this before, we don't talk about that with Saka, do we? We don't go, oh, well, even when Ødegaard wasn't there, obviously he's been better, I think, since Ødegaard came back. But even when Ødegaard wasn't there, you could still see Bukayo Saka, and Ben White's not there. And, you never, it's never like Goldilocks with Saka, is it? It's just put him on the pitch and you feel fine. And yeah, I think... I do think it's interesting as well in hindsight, trying to sign Mudryk and stuff like that. That suggests that maybe Arteta saw this coming, maybe saw a bit of a plateauing. And
he's better than that.
Well, no.
Be clear.
Well, clearly, yes, we dodged a bullet. But, he tried to buy someone in that position. And
we looked at Nico Williams, who also, he might be better than, let's be honest. He's not doing much.
And I think what we're
not that easy, is it?
No. And I think what we're looking at here is not that, maybe it will, I don't know, but not that Martinelli gets sold, but maybe that his role is more Trossardian, as it were. And actually, when Trossard comes on, he looks much better. But at the same time, that is when Diallo and Rashford are on. So
Yeah.
that's when they are more open on that side, and it's 2-0. And then I must mention, by the way, the crowd reaction when Anthony came on was absolutely superb. I've just never heard an entire stadium just laugh at a player. And ordinarily, I might feel a little bit of sympathy for a player that happened to. I do not feel that sympathy for Anthony whatsoever. I thought it was absolutely wonderful. And he then proceeded to just run around like a blue-ass fly and do absolutely nothing. And that was wonderful, Anthony at right wing back. And so I think as much as Trossard looked, I think, quite a bit better and quite a bit more dangerous than Martinelli, I do think also the game state looked much more like we thought it would at the beginning and what we picked Martinelli for.
Yeah. It's one of these things, right? I don't think there needs to be any hand-wringing about Martinelli. I think he's clearly a good player and a player that can be influential for us. When we think about what that side of the pitch needs, especially if it's going to be the more off the ball side, right? The arriving late to score thing he can do. He did it against Sporting, right? He scored a goal doing that. But I do think that when it gets to the left, often because of the fact that we've overloaded the right, he is a little more isolated. And there is a chance for him to do like what he did against Maguire. And I think you just need to be a little bit more, better execution, a little more effective in those moments. So we'll see. We'll keep an eye on it. We have Leo Trossard. We have Gabriel Martinelli. They're both very good players. I think it is certainly possible that we could go get another Trossard level signing. Like, we don't have to go sign the superstar left wing. But what if we got a 26 or 27-year-old Trossardian kind of signing, a 35 million type signing? Like, I think that's what Liverpool paid for Gakpo. I know Jota wasn't much more than that. That kind of signing to just go compete with Martinelli for the foreseeable future, as Leo now is 30 and is maybe aging into a reducing role with us. So it'd be something interesting to keep an eye on. Tim, look, I think it'd be unfair if we didn't praise David Raya a bit, by the way. Like, United created nothing, 0.2 expected goals, 5 shots. It was a non-display from United, really a no-show. But, and we've seen this, right? Like when West Ham score an unbelievable free kick that shouldn't even have been a foul, when James Justin scores a golazo from nothing, sometimes you get punished in football, and we nearly got punished but for Raya clawing away a header in the 67th minute. And obviously that would have had huge implications in that moment, because it is 1-0 at that point, and De Ligt gets onto a ball and the header's looping towards the far corner, and Raya not only claws it out, but he claws it out to safety. And combining that with just another solid performance with the ball at his feet, I think he is a huge part of how we defend and how we control the ball from the back.
Yeah, 100%. I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think he's been our player of the season so far. I think he's been that good. I think he's gone up another 2 levels. I think the thing is about Raya as well is that I think we all had an idea about what he can do with his feet. And actually, that's levels above what I thought it was, because I don't watch every minute of every Brentford game by any means. But I thought, and not in like in an agricultural sense, I thought, he's got a good ping to Tony or to Mbeumo, but he's got so much more than that. He's got every club in the bag in terms of his distribution, and he's almost like a reverse target man. Like just having Kai up front, for example, having like that gives you comfort as long as you don't overdo it. That gives you the kind of, if we come under pressure, I can put it up there and he might win it. He'll at least compete to win it and we can get out of trouble. And Raya's almost like the inverse of that. It's almost like, if we're getting pressed, he'll come out, he'll come over to the corner flag, he'll come to the corner of the box. Like, he's really fearless with his positioning. I think he's another one who's got an aura now on the ball where no one really presses him anymore, like for the kind of risks he takes with the ball and, doing that thing, foot on the ball and all of that. Compare that to, and, making a comparison to the United goalkeeper, Onana, who generally is quite good with his feet, but you can see what we thought of him as an actual goalkeeper with his hands. But we were pressing Onana. Like, we nearly got him twice in his own area. No one does that to Raya anymore. And I thought back to that Man City game he played last season, where he got charged down a couple of times in the first few minutes. That seems like 100 years ago. But what he's really adding as well, like, I think we all knew this, and, Clive always referred to him as like the 11th player, and I think that's right. But I think what we're seeing is world-class goalkeeping in the traditional sense as well. And again, not just, he always had the catching crosses and stuff like that, but we have seen 3 or 4 absolutely world-class saves from him this season, and they've all been crucial as well. So the Atalanta double save when it's 0-0, at Villa he makes that save at, are we 1-0 up, or is it 0-0 when he makes that? It's a game changer.
I think it's 1-0.
Yeah. I think it would have been an equaliser. But I mean, either way, it would have changed the result, and this one would have as well. Like, I think we're just seeing like really world-class goalkeeping in the traditional sense. And I've been thinking for a couple of weeks, like, with Alisson injured, Ederson's been dropped. Like, who's better in the Premier League at the moment? Like, I don't think anyone's close at the moment, to be honest, because Chelsea's goalkeeper's rubbish, United's goalkeeper's rubbish, Tottenham's goalkeeper good at some things, but again, put a cross under his crossbar and he turns into a...
No, I think he's a liability. Yeah, I think he's a liability because you can be great at saving shots, but you have to control your area. And the funny thing is, you're not going to like hearing this, but Onana's actually having a brilliant season.
Yeah. No, I've definitely heard that. Like that, and like I certainly hadn't seen anyone ridiculing him anymore. From all kind of reports and stuff I'd read, that he'd started doing goalkeepery stuff, but again, where did all our corners go? Under the crossbar.
Right, under the crossbar.
And like, who does that to Arsenal? Like, Raya is anything 6-yard box, Raya's taking it.
He's grabbing it. Yeah.
Further than that, he's taking it. And I think he's been pretty close to faultless. And yeah, I think our best player so far this season.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think you could arguably say, if he's fit, Alisson is still the guy you would want above anybody maybe in the world. But Raya right now in the league, for anybody playing, is as good as anyone. And it is so important too, because you know why, Tim? Like, we don't give much away. We don't. We really, really don't. Again, our XG against is staggeringly good. Like, just compare the Newcastle game. Tim, we were shit against Newcastle, okay? Everybody thinks we're shit. I think we're shit. The XG in that game was 1.1 for Arsenal to 0.5 for Newcastle. And we lost. And it's like, that's football for you. You know what I mean? Their 0.5 went in, our 1.1 didn't. And that's football for you. But like, that's what you don't want. And you know how you wind up not getting footballed? Your keeper keeps out their 1/2 chance. Like Raya did against United, keeps out the 1/2 chance they do get. Because Liverpool went to Newcastle and drew 3-3. It's a better result technically. They gave up 2.1 expected goals. We never do that, right? And they gave up a lot of expected goals against Southampton. They are showing that they can be gotten at. And the thing that I think still gives me confidence that we are going to be in this title race is, not only do we have a great keeper, not only do we have great defenders, but just in general, we give very little away. And so I think Liverpool, to me, still look a lot like the Liverpool of last season, which is, convince me you're not going to let too many in at the other end to consistently pick up 3 points. Maybe they will. We'll see. I mean, they have the 7-point advantage, so we'll see. But I feel pretty good about that. Look, as a final thing on this game, and then we'll just quickly touch on the Fulham game. I mean, this is a really, really important day. And I think, obviously we get the second goal, and then we could have had a third. Mikel Merino comes on, and every single game he's played, he's either scored or nearly scored from a set piece. He heads just wide on this one. We were able to get some players on late, which was, nice to be able to do. Trossard comes on for Martinelli, as we mentioned. Zinchenko is an interesting one, because I thought Zinchenko did really well, but you could tell the bozo moments were starting to come. At 60 minutes without fail, this guy just stops being able to either concentrate, or he gets out of puff and starts doing bad things. And you know what Arteta did? He just took him off. He got a yellow card at 66 minutes, and he was off by 71 minutes. And Partey moved to right back. And honestly, I think we looked great. I think we finished out the game brilliantly.
Again, because he's right opposite me and I can see it. The second the yellow Zinchenko pulled the shirt and got the yellow card, I promise you, the second that happened, Arteta was looked over at the subs. Like I could see his hand waving out the corner of my eye. Like, it took another 5 minutes. That's purely because of the time it takes for the player to get ready and the ball to go out of play. Like, if Arteta could have done it at that second, he would have. Like, it was instant. And that's right. And we've got, even with like the depletion, we've got the depth to do that. And again, that's just a real advantage of having so many multifunctional players. Timber goes across to left back, no problem. Partey goes to right back, no problem. Like, players swap around, so even though we've got injuries at the back, it's still pretty seamless. And again, it just makes me so angry that, like, when I think of that Liverpool home game, like the amount of defensive injuries we had to have to finally just be like, okay, this setup is genuinely ridiculous now. We've got like 5 or 6 defenders out. And, but, on this occasion, we've only got like 3 or 4 out. So maybe 4. And it's like, and it's still pretty seamless. So, yeah. And look, as much as, United's approach on the right probably played into our hands as well, because we never play Zinchenko for 90 minutes. And what United did was basically gave up the 70 minutes that Zinchenko plays and then put like Rashford on afterwards and put Rashford against Timber. And it's just like, well, thanks. That suits us, quite frankly. So, yeah, just like a good... I've heard people say like Arteta's getting better at using his squad, and maybe that's true. I just think we've got a better squad. I don't think he's necessarily learning how to do that. I just think he's got a bigger group of players that he can actually trust to be able to do this. I don't see this as a light bulb moment for him as a manager, but it is very indicative of how we're able to use the bench and the varied ways we've used it as well. Like, because really the last few games, we've only really had to play one half to win the game. Like West Ham, it's the first half and the second half's a non-event. This time, first half's a non-event and we don't really do a lot. But we're kind of playing 45-minute football at the moment and winning games with it. And however deliberate that is, I suspect it's not. But it's obviously because it was backloaded this time into the second half. But we kind of did the same thing here, right? We played for one half, and that's actually useful with the schedule we've got.
Yeah, and I think that's fine. Look, I didn't love the first half. I think...
I'm sure Arteta didn't.
Yeah, I think that certainly was not the intensity and the aggression that we wanted to show. But United were down 1-0 from the 54th minute, and they managed 3 shots. They were down 2-0 from the 73rd minute, and they had 1 shot the rest of the game. It's just, that's the thing. We are starting to get that aura back, that ability back, I think, to just say, we're going to hold you at arm's length, and there's not much you can do about it. I think there have been times this season where our way of defending was too deep and gave the opposition too much of a foothold in the game. This was not that. That second half, they never got a foothold in the game. So it's so nice to beat United. So nice to also see that United, in my book, are still so far away. That's a team that looks very, very far away to me. And that's an encouraging thing. It's not just, hey, new manager, now they're good. They're still a long way away. Yeah. So as we finish up here, it is Fulham on Sunday, and look, it would be very easy to overlook Fulham for the Champions League and we just beat United. But I think in a way we're helped by the fact that Fulham was our bogey team last season. So Tim, I assume that you would agree with me that Mikel is going to lean very heavily on that. And by the way, on the fact that Fulham have just beaten Brighton 3-1, 2 goals for Iwobi, by the way, who is playing out of his mind and will face us again. Smith Rowe will probably face us. Reece Nelson will not be eligible to play against us. But yeah, I mean, this is a team that we lost the title to last season, if you want to look at it that way. So do you think that will be the card that Mikel plays to make sure the team is laser focused on this one?
100% it will be, yes. Like, I think we know the manager well enough by now that it's no stone unturned. And it's funny, people again on the outside kind of, I heard a discussion about a couple of weeks ago on a generalist football podcast that was talking about, I think it was just after Zinchenko had told some anecdote about something that he'd done, and people are like, oh, it's a bit David Brent, it's a bit cringe, and like some of those things in isolation, maybe they are, but it's about when you're looking for marginal gains, it's about volume. It's like if you keep doing that. And I think one of the things that I'd be fascinated to hear about from a player one day is how Arteta keeps the environment fresh. I think clearly that's what it's all about, because I was listening to a podcast about Villa last week and like, why is Villa form slumped? And, there were guys who cover Villa who were saying like, well, now they're in the Champions League and the amount of video analysis, players are starting to get a bit tired of, watching 4 or 5 hours of video and all of that. And it's beginning to wear a little bit thin. And I think Emery is a manager who has historically really struggled to keep the environment vibrant. Whereas I think Arteta, it sounds like, maybe it's just because maybe all managers do this stuff and we just hear about this. But I think as corny as some of those tricks sound, and, on the All or Nothing documentary, and he puts the Ivan Toney tweet up before we play Brentford and all of that. Like, I think first of all, that is about continuing to create a spark in the environment and keep things interesting and keep players engaged and on their toes. But I also think it's a volume thing. It's just otherwise players are just going to get bored of hearing the same thing. So you've got to switch up the delivery a little bit. And I've got no doubt every single time we've played a team who we lost to the game before, the season before, like he'll be asked about it in the press conference tomorrow, and he'll say, "No, we don't really talk about that." And if we win on Sunday, he'll say, "We talked about this." Yeah,
yeah, 100%.
That's so 100%. And I'm sure they'll watch that game and everything like that. They'll watch how we were done on crosses, on the goals, and they're a sparky team, Fulham. They're a difficult team, and we know that. And I think that might work in our favour. Actually, what happened last season.
Yeah, and look, on paper, Liverpool should batter Everton. That's a very, very bad team, but that's a derby for them. Everton have not gotten anything off Liverpool in ages. I think I'm right in saying they basically have been drubbed for a decade. But
it's the last one at Goodison as well,
yeah.
and that's a factor. I'm not saying that means that they're definitely going to win. It's a factor, though.
Yeah, and so we'll see. And look, Chelsea go to Tottenham, by the way, and like Tottenham are losing to Bournemouth as we speak. It's not going well over there, but Chelsea are probably looking at themselves and saying, "Are we in a title race?" So it'll be interesting to see how that shapes up. But it can get very interesting very quickly, because we then host Everton. The next is our next game in the league. Liverpool host Fulham, so a little bit trickier. But then they go to Tottenham, and we go to Palace. So this is the period where Liverpool, their nerve is going to be tested. We may not have Gabriel for Fulham again. We may not have Calafiori for Fulham again. I don't know, anybody else picking up knocks or what the case is, but I would imagine maybe Leo comes in for Martinelli. Otherwise, if Gabriel and Calafiori aren't fit, you expect it to be the same team?
Yeah, I think so. I think there was some suggestion that maybe Calafiori and Gabriel could have been nursed through this game. But again, like I said, attack, United, slower mid-table, so probably didn't take a gamble. Whereas, Fulham have a better attack than United.
No question. Yeah.
I'll say that with my whole chest.
Yeah.
I'd probably take all of that Fulham front four before I'd take anyone in the United front four, quite frankly. So, maybe one of those guys will come back or something if they can get them back. But yeah, I'm definitely expecting Trossard for Martinelli. And, does Marino come in? Is there a place for him? I still suspect it will be Partey, Rice and Ødegaard. I just think that's where Arteta is, and he'll play that midfield pretty much every time he can.
It is a bit of a smaller pitch, I think. And I could just be saying that. I always feel like Craven Cottage is small. But what I would say is, if Partey is half fit, I think we saw That's not worth I'd be fine with Jorginho starting if Partey is only half fit and getting Partey all the way fit. That would be the only thing I'd say. I mean, he grew into the game massively against United, but that first half, you saw what a half fit Partey gives you, and it's nowhere near what we need. So that would be the only thing I'd say. I'd also be fine with seeing what a Marino, Rice, and Odegaard midfield looks like. I mean, I feel like at some point we want to look at that. Yep. This could be a game to look at that. I would look. Here's what I hope for more than anything. I want us to win the league, scoring no open play goals the rest of the season. That's all I want, just for Gary Neville's sake. I think we can leave it there. That's plenty. We're going to have a director of football candidate pod for you tomorrow on Patreon and subscription. And then the instant reaction over the weekend will be back on Monday. Clive will be around for all of that, so you'll enjoy the Clive with that. But for now, Paul is already gone. Tim, thank you very much.
My pleasure as always.
My name's Elliot Smith. You can block me everywhere. And Gunner, we love you. And I really hope we will talk to you after Arsenal 10, Fulham 0.